What if the most powerful spiritual technology for consciousness transformation could also trigger our overwhelming psychological crises that modern psychiatry often mistakes for mental illness? What if the ancient practice designed to awaken dormant energy at the base of your spine carries real risks that require careful preparation and skilled guidance to navigate safely? Today we're exploring Kundalini awakening, a phenomenon documented for thousands of years in yogic traditions that can produce profound spiritual breakthroughs or destabilizing emergencies depending on how it's approached. This isn't mystical speculation. It's a documented process with measurable effects that demand respect, understanding, and proper preparation. Kundalini is mentioned in the Upanishads, ancient Hindu texts dating to the 9th through 7th centuries BCE. The Sanskrit adjective kundalin means circular, annular, and is mentioned as a noun for snake, in the sense of coiled, in the 12th century Raja Tarangini chronicle. This imagery of the coiled serpent represents dormant spiritual energy believed to reside at the base of the spine. In normative tantric systems, Kundalini is considered to be dormant until it is activated as by the practice of yoga, and channeled upward through the central channel in a process of spiritual perfection. The concept emerges from Tantra and Shakti traditions within Hinduism, where Kundalini represents the divine feminine power, Shakti, that when awakened rises through energy centers called chakras, toward union with Shiva consciousness at the crown of the head. The earliest systematic teachings about Kundalini appear in tantric texts from around the 5th century CE onward. Sir John Woodruff, also known by his pseudonym Arthur Avalon, was a British Orientalist, whose published work stimulated far-reaching interest in Hindu philosophy and yogic practices. His 1918 book, The Serpent Power, translated key tantric texts, including the Shachakranirupana written by Purnananda Svami in 1526, bringing sophisticated understanding of Kundalini to Western audiences. Important classical texts include the Hatha Yoga Pradipika from the 15th century, and the Shiva Samhita, both describing specific practices designed to awaken Kundalini energy. These weren't casual techniques, but serious spiritual disciplines requiring years of preparation, including ethical purification, physical conditioning through asana practice, breath control through pranayama, and mental training through meditation. The texts emphasized that proper preparation of body, nervous system, and mind was essential before attempting Kundalini awakening. Kundalini is described as a sleeping, dormant potential force in the human organism. When awakened, Kundalini is said to rise through the body, activating various energy centers or chakras, leading to profound transformation of consciousness. The process involves energy moving from the base of the spine upward through successive chakras until reaching the crown, producing increasingly refined states of awareness at each level. The progress of Kundalini through the different chakras is believed to achieve different levels of awakening and a mystical experience, until Kundalini finally reaches the top of the head, Sahasrara or crown chakra, producing a profound transformation of consciousness. Each chakra activation brings characteristic experiences, challenges, and capacities. The root chakra involves grounding and survival instincts, the sacral involves creativity and intimacy, the solar plexus involves willpower and identity, the heart involves love and compassion, the throat involves expression and truth, the third eye involves intuition and insight, and the crown involves transcendent unity consciousness. Swami Shivananda Saraswati stated in his book, Kundalini Yoga, that supersensual visions appear before the mental eye of the aspirant, new worlds with indescribable wonders and charms unfold themselves before the yogi, planes after planes reveal their existence and grandeur to the practitioner, and the yogi gets divine knowledge, power and bliss, in increasing degrees, when Kundalini passes through chakra after chakra, making them to bloom in all their glory. The awakening can occur through various means. Yoga gurus consider that Kundalini can be awakened by Shaktipat, spiritual transmission by a guru or teacher, or by spiritual practices such as yoga or meditation. Some traditions emphasize gradual systematic preparation and awakening under guidance, while others recognize that spontaneous awakenings can occur through intense meditation, life crises, near-ending experiences, or sometimes without apparent cause. When Kundalini is awakened spontaneously or without guidance, it can lead to Kundalini syndrome, which sometimes presents as psychosis. This represents the most serious risk associated with Kundalini awakening. The symptoms of Kundalini are of a physiological or psychotic order, and one cannot reject the hypothesis of its strong similarity with schizophrenia. Kundalini syndrome refers to a set of symptoms or experiences that may arise due to an intense or spontaneous awakening of Kundalini energy. Physical symptoms can include intense heat or cold in the body, involuntary movements or tremors, changes in breathing patterns, altered sleep needs, unusual energy surges, pressure or pain along the spine, and extreme sensitivity to stimuli. These aren't imaginary, but represent real physiological responses to the energetic awakening process. Psychological and emotional symptoms often prove even more challenging. People may experience intense fear or anxiety, emotional volatility with rapid mood swings, feelings of depersonalization or losing sense of identity, difficulty distinguishing inner experience from external reality, overwhelming visions or auditory experiences, and profound existential confusion. Individuals may feel that their sense of identity is breaking down, that their old values no longer hold true, and that the very ground beneath their personal realities is radically shifting. A spiritual emergency is a term introduced by psychologists Stanislav and Christina Grof to describe a crisis or upheaval in an individual's inner life, often characterized by a significant shift in consciousness or identity. The Grofs, pioneers in transpersonal psychology, distinguished spiritual emergencies from mental illness, recognizing them as potentially transformative crises rather than pathological conditions. Many individuals experiencing episodes of no ordinary states of consciousness accompanied by various emotional, perceptual, and psychosomatic manifestations are undergoing an evolutionary crisis rather than suffering from a mental disease. However, trying to suppress the source of this crisis could be risky, and could lead the patient straight to ending. This creates a therapeutic dilemma. Traditional psychiatric responses involving medication and suppression can potentially make the situation worse by blocking a natural transformative process. Yet the intensity of symptoms sometimes requires immediate intervention to ensure safety. It's important to note that a spiritual emergency is different from a mental health crisis or a psychiatric disorder. While symptoms may overlap, several key differences help distinguish them. Spiritual emergencies typically occur in context of spiritual practice, follow periods of intensive meditation or other consciousness-altering practices. This includes transpersonal or mystical content involving experiences of unity, divine presence, or archetypal imagery. The person experiencing spiritual emergency usually maintains some capacity for insight, recognizing their experience as connected to spiritual development even while overwhelmed by it. They may have periods of clarity alternating with crisis, unlike the more consistent impairment seen in severe mental illness. The trajectory also differs. With proper support, spiritual emergencies typically resolve toward higher functioning and integration, while untreated mental illness tends toward deterioration or chronic impairment. Family history and prior functioning matter. People experiencing spiritual emergency often have no history of mental illness and were functioning well before the crisis. The triggering factor is usually identifiable and relates to spiritual practice or transformative life events. In contrast, mental illness often has genetic components, emerges more gradually without clear external triggers, and shows patterns of cognitive disorganization beyond what spiritual emergence produces. Carl Jung was among the first Western psychologists to recognize this distinction. C.G. Jung was one of the first pioneers to distinguish a self-healing symptom in Kundalini, in correlation with the process of what he defines as individuation. Jung's research into mandalas and their psychological meanings led him to interpret Kundalini as a creative power of reintegration and transfiguration, rather than pathology. According to Hindu tradition, in order to be able to integrate this spiritual energy, a period of careful purification and strengthening of the body and nervous system is usually required beforehand. Traditional yoga systems never approached Kundalini awakening casually, but developed comprehensive preparation protocols spanning years. It is recommended to become free of desire or adopt vairagya before trying to arouse Kundalini. Additionally, having a guru is beneficial in Kundalini yoga, because a support can suggest the best method to awaken the Kundalini. The guru's role wasn't merely teaching techniques, but monitoring the student's readiness, providing individualized guidance, and intervening when problems arose during the awakening process. The practice of kriyas and meditations in Kundalini yoga are designed to raise complete body awareness to prepare the body, nervous system, and mind to handle the energy of Kundalini rising. The preparation includes developing physical strength and flexibility through asana practice, purifying energy channels through pranayama and kriyas, cultivating mental stability through meditation, and establishing ethical foundation through yamas and niyamas. Ethical preparation proves particularly important. The traditional yamas include non-violence, truthfulness, non-stealing, intimate restraint, and non-possessiveness. These aren't arbitrary moral rules but practical prerequisites. Someone still heavily identified with ego drives, material desires, and interpersonal conflicts lacks the stability to safely navigate the ego dissolution and consciousness expansion Kundalini awakening produces. A simple breathing technique of alternate nostrils, breathing out of the left nostril, then the right nostril, are taught as a method to cleanse the nadis, or subtle channels and pathways, to help awaken Kundalini energy. These preparatory practices work systematically to balance the nervous system, clear energetic blockages, and gradually accustom consciousness to expanded states before attempting full awakening. The modern practice that goes by the name Kundalini Yoga was created by a man called Harbhajan Singh Puri, better known as the Three-Ho cult leader Yogi Bhajan. Scholar Philip de Slip's research proved that Yogi Bhajan didn't inherit, but rather fabricated, the practice transmitted to his students under the name Kundalini Yoga. The concept matters because the commercialized Kundalini Yoga taught in many Western studios today often lacks the traditional safeguards and comprehensive preparation that made the practice safe. Classes marketed as Kundalini Yoga frequently focus on energetic techniques without adequate emphasis on ethical preparation, lifestyle factors, and the years of foundational practice traditional systems required. In 1968, Harbhajan Singh Puri, also known as Yogi Bhajan, introduced his own brand of Kundalini Yoga into the United States. Although this popularization brought yogic practices to broader audiences, it also created problems by presenting advanced energetic techniques to unprepared practitioners without traditional context and safeguards. The Western fitness and wellness industry's tendency to strip spiritual practices of their traditional frameworks and commercialized techniques creates particular dangers with Kundalini work. People drawn to classes marketed as Kundalini Yoga may have no idea they're engaging practices that traditional systems considered advanced and potentially dangerous without proper preparation. The casual weekend workshop or drop-in class environment provides none of the ongoing guidance and relationship with qualified teacher that safe Kundalini practice requires. If you're interested in Kundalini practices or experiencing spontaneous Kundalini awakening, several strategies can help navigate the process more safely. First and most importantly, seek qualified guidance. This means finding teachers with legitimate training in traditional systems, ideally those who've been practicing for decades and have direct experience with the awakening process themselves. Be extremely cautious of self-proclaimed Kundalini teachers with brief training or those making grandiose claims. Practicing grounding techniques, mindfulness, and self-care strategies can help individuals navigate the Kundalini spiritual practice with greater ease and resilience. Grounding becomes essential during intense energetic experiences. This includes physical grounding through walking barefoot on earth, working with hands in soil, spending time in nature, and engaging in physical exercise. Dietary grounding through warm, substantial foods rather than light or raw foods helps anchor energy. Routine and structure in daily life provide psychological grounding during consciousness-disrupting experiences. Counseling can be a valuable and supportive resource for individuals experiencing a spiritual emergency or Kundalini syndrome. Seek spiritual healers or therapists familiar with transpersonal psychology who understand spiritual emergency proves crucial. A counselor can provide validation and normalization of the individual's experiences, reassuring them that spiritual emergencies and Kundalini awakenings are not uncommon and can be part of a profound personal transformation. Build a support network that includes both spiritual practitioners who understand the process and mental health professionals who can distinguish spiritual emergency from mental illness requiring different intervention. Having support you can call during crisis who won't immediately pathologize your experience, but also won't minimize genuine danger makes an enormous difference. Slow down or temporarily suspend practices if experiences become overwhelming. Traditional systems always emphasized proceeding gradually. If Kundalini awakening produces more disruption than you can integrate, reducing the intensity of the practice or take breaks, as this will allow the nervous system and psyche time to adjust. This isn't failure but wisdom about pacing transformation appropriately. If properly understood and treated as difficult stages in a natural developmental process, these experiences, spiritual emergencies or transpersonal crises, can result in emotional and psychosomatic healing, creative problem solving, personality transformation, and consciousness evolution. This represents the other side of the Kundalini awakening story. With proper support and integration, what begins as crisis can become breakthrough. People who successfully navigate Kundalini awakening often report profound benefits. Benefits include heightened intuition and creativity, increased empathy and compassion, direct experiences of unity consciousness, release of psychological patterns and traumas stored in the body, enhanced energy and vitality, deeper sense of meaning and purpose, and fundamental shift in identity from separate ego to interconnected awareness. The process of having a Kundalini awakening can happen quickly for some, while others may not experience an awakening at all. Having a knowledgeable teacher guiding and supporting individuals throughout the experience is recommended. Their experience helps to improve the entire experience, providing reassurance and emotional support. Integration requires time and conscious work. The insights, energy shifts, and consciousness changes need to be incorporated into daily life rather than remaining isolated peak experiences. This involves journaling and reflection to process experiences, lifestyle changes, development of connection to expanded states, and often therapeutic work to resolve psychological material that surfaced during awakening. The goal isn't just having powerful experiences, but sustainable transformation that enhances functioning and well-being. Someone who successfully integrated Kundalini awakening demonstrates this through improved relationships and greater psychological stability, alongside expanded consciousness of maintaining access to transpersonal dimensions of experience. If you're drawn to Kundalini practices, approach them with appropriate respect and patience. Begin with foundational practices before attempting advanced techniques. This means establishing regular meditation practice, developing body awareness through gentle yoga, learning basic pranayama, and cultivating ethical lifestyle. These foundations should be solidly established before engaging specifically Kundalini-oriented practices. Study traditional texts and teachings to understand what you're working with. Reading translations of classical sources like the Hatha Yoga Pradeep Eka provides context that modern popularizations often lack. Understanding that Kundalini awakening is a comprehensive transformation rather than isolated experience helps set appropriate expectations. Pay attention to your motivation. Are you seeking Kundalini awakening for ego gratification, special powers, or escape from ordinary life? These motivations typically lead to problems. Healthy motivation involves genuine desire for spiritual growth, willingness to undergo necessary transformation, and dedication to serving truth rather than self-aggrandizement. Maintain balance in your life. Kundalini practices shouldn't become obsessive focused to the exclusion of relationships, work, and ordinary responsibilities. The goal is integration, not escape into spiritual practice. Someone properly prepared for Kundalini awakening has stable life foundation that can support transformation rather than chaos that awakening might temporarily increase. Be willing to proceed slowly and honor your limits. There's no race to awaken Kundalini. Traditional practitioners might spend years or decades in preparation. This patience ensures that when awakening occurs, you have capacity to handle it. Rushing the process creates the very problems this video warns about. Kundalini awakening represents one of humanity's most powerful technologies for consciousness transformation, documented in yogic traditions spanning thousands of years. Kundalini is mentioned in the Upanishads dating to 9th through 7th centuries BCE, with systematic practices developed through tantric and hatha yoga traditions. The potential benefits include profound spiritual realization, psychological healing, and fundamental transformation of consciousness and identity. However, the risks are equally real and demand respect. When Kundalini is awakened spontaneously or without guidance, it can lead to Kundalini syndrome, which sometimes presents as psychosis. The intensity of Kundalini awakening can overwhelm unprepared practitioners, producing symptoms that modern psychiatry often mistakes for mental illness. Many individuals experiencing episodes of non-ordinary states of consciousness are undergoing an evolutionary crisis, rather than suffering from a mental disease. Safe navigation requires comprehensive preparation, qualified guidance, understanding of the process, appropriate support networks, and willingness to proceed gradually. Traditional systems developed extensive safeguards for good reason. The Western commercialization of Kundalini practices has sometimes stripped away these protections, creating dangers that proper approach would avoid. With appropriate respect, preparation, and guidance, Kundalini awakening can be the profound transformative process the traditions describe. Without these elements, it risks becoming the crisis that requires careful intervention. The wisdom lies in knowing the difference and proceeding accordingly. If exploring the real risks and rewards of Kundalini awakening has given you more informed perspective on this powerful practice, show your appreciation by hitting like and subscribe. Share this with anyone interested in spiritual practices who needs to understand both the potential and the dangers. Until next time, may your spiritual journey proceed with wisdom.